a legendary Islamic epic. It was the fastest battle in history. That changed the modern history of Europe and proved the power of Muslims in the old continent. And they exterminated the legendary Hungarian army in less than an hour and a half, and crushed the ancient Hungarian Empire, led by Ghazi Suleiman the Magnificent. The necks of Europeans were subjected to Muslims for more than 3 centuries. Epic Mohacs. At first, do not forget to like the clip and subscribe to the channel to help us publish more, God willing. A battle that the Hungarians consider a great historical disaster, and from the severity of their grief over this epic, they use, for example, to express her great pain for any disaster that happens to them. They say this is worse than our defeat on Mohacs Day. Hence the Hungarian national anthem. You find them reminding the Ottoman Empire of bad, because of their grief over what I did to them, because it eliminated the largest Christian country in Europe in this era, and conquered the strongest army in their history, and that lasted between wars and victories, more than 6.5 centuries. But the Ottoman army managed to crush it in less than an hour and a half. They subjugated a large part of Europe and they controlled Hungary for more than 3 centuries. The events of this battle begin when Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent took over the rule of the Ottoman Empire, 10th of the Ottoman sultans. The second Ottoman sultan is called the Caliph of the Muslims and the commander of the faithful, after his father, the first Caliph Suleiman. The Ottoman Empire arrived during his reign, to its greatest extent in its entire history. His reign lasted 46 years. It is the longest reign in Ottoman history. The title of Sultan Suleiman be legal because he issued many wise laws to organize governance and administration within the Ottoman Empire. But all these laws were for administrative affairs only. It was all in accordance with Islamic law. Suleiman did not legislate laws that contradict Islamic law, as some ignorant people slander him. Europeans called him Suleiman the Magnificent because of his huge conquests in the whole world and the strength of Islam and the Ottoman Empire during his reign. It was called his reign. It is the golden age of the Ottoman Empire. In the year 926 AH, 1520 AD, his father, Caliph Suleiman, died, so Suleiman the Magnificent took over the succession of the Ottoman Empire. Omar Suleiman was 26 years old. Suleiman began his rule by launching various campaigns on Christian powers in Central Europe and the Mediterranean. But because of his young age, the kings of Europe underestimated his power. Even when he sent a message to King Louis II of Hungary, he tells her to pay the tribute he used to pay to his father, and he renews with him the treaties between the two countries. But the King of Hungary, Louis, did not care about his young age. Louis also changed the alliance he made with the Emperor of Spain and Romania, Carlos V. He did not care about the power of Suleiman the Magnificent and the Ottomans. Rather, he did what is more criminal and ugly. So Louis killed the messenger of the Ottoman Empire. As a declaration of war between the two countries, Sultan Suleiman's diet aroused and his anger intensified. He swore to kill Louis and annihilate the Hungarian army, and immediately he decided to begin the conquest of Belgrade, which was an impregnable fortress. It is the gateway to the Kingdom of Hungary. It is the gateway to all of Europe. Sultan Suleiman moved with a very large army, so much so that historians differed in the number of its magnitude, but we can imagine the number by the preparations that have been prepared. There were 30,000 camels with them to carry weapons, and 10,000 wagons to carry wheat and barley. And when that army arrived in Belgrade, a siege hit its castle and surrounded the walls with mines and cannons, and they continued to demolish the forts and walls for 7 consecutive days. And from God to the Muslims with the clear conquest, they entered it victoriously, by the grace of God, on the 26th of Ramadan in the year 927 AH. It was the defeat of the Hungarian army in Belgrade. It's a temporary battle in preparation for the major war, which was postponed for 5 years. Each party was preparing itself for a decisive historic meeting between the two empires. But then there were some differences within the Empire of Hungary. King Louis could not gather all the empire's army, and he gathered everyone he could muster as much as possible, and also the help of the Pope in the Vatican, and he sought the help of various forces from European countries, which was biting the fingertips of anger from the Muslim conquest of the fortified city of Belgrade. Many countries joined the Hungarian army, such as the Czech Republic, Croatia, Poland, and troops from Holy Romania, and the Pope provided them with priests and monks to emphasize the sanctity of the Crusades, and it is for the survival of Christendom in Europe, and to urge the soldiers to fight the Muslims with courage and sacrifice. The number of the Crusader alliance reached to 200,000 soldiers. They relied on heavily armored knights. Armored horses were called the Knights of the Gendarmerie. With them were mercenary soldiers and light cavalry, and they brought with them 90 medium-sized cannons. And on the other hand, it was Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent. It is a huge army of 100,000 soldiers, one of the elite forces, the Janissaries that carry rifles, and others from the cavalry and Bashi bazooka forces. Of course, they brought with them the most important weapon, which is artillery, which was made up of 300 cannon, one of the newest guns of that era. And in the month of Rajab in the year 932 AH, Sultan Suleiman moved at the head of the Ottoman army from Istanbul in the direction of Mohacs Valley. On the way, he controlled some castles and cities and across the Danube and reached the Mohacs Valley. After 128 days campaign exit, he covered a distance of more than 1,000 kilometers in the summertime. The army arrived exhausted from the long distance and the intense heat. The two armies encamped on the outskirts of the Mohacs Valley. When the night entered, the Hungarian army began to prepare for battle. On the other hand, the voices of takbir were loud in the Muslim camp, and they used to spend the night praying to God Almighty to help them. And Sultan Suleiman resorted to God and asked him for victory. So he went out to the soldiers and walked among their ranks, and he spoke to them about the glory of jihad and the virtue of martyrdom for the sake of God and the elevation of Islam and Muslims. And when the time of dawn entered, the Sultan prayed with the soldiers. Then he grabbed his sword and stood in front of the ranks, and he preached a sermon to them. He urged them to be patient and steadfast. And he told them, "Like I'm with you, and the spirit of the messenger of God looks at you." The soldiers were affected, and some of them wept because of the eloquence of what he said. And the Sultan put the battle plan with the leaders. Ibrahim Pasha suggested Ali Sultan divide the army into 3 lines, the first and second row facing the Hungarians, and the third row in which the Sultan and the Janissaries. They carry rifles and cannons in front of them to prepare a tight ambush. Armored gendarmerie, which is difficult to fight with swords and spears, and even guns, because it's the soldiers with their horses. They are very tightly laminated, and they were called medieval tank. So they had to be put in front of the cannons to get rid of their evil. The beginning of the battle. And by the afternoon of the 29th day of August the military clash has begun. Armored gendarmerie forces launched, and Hungarian armored knights, to clash with Muslim forces. So the Ottoman Janissaries advanced to them. They are elite forces. And the Hungarians began to press the front ranks. But the Ottomans were able to repel the attack, thanks to God, and it was Sultan Suleiman. He issued orders for the first two rows to hold out for an hour in combat, and they exhaust the front of the Hungarian army. And the Muslims continued to exhaust the Hungarians according to plan. The fighting lasted for an hour. At a certain moment, the Sultan issued orders to the first two rows by going back and then withdraw to the sides. The Hungarians thought that the Muslims, they were defeated, and they began to run away. So they set out after them until they finished them off. Thus, the Hungarians were deceived for their greed to kill the Sultan and the elimination of the Ottoman army. And by surprise, Muslim soldiers displace on the sides, so the big trap appeared clear to the infidels. And the Hungarians found themselves face to face, in front of the giant Ottoman cannons, and in front of the Janissary soldiers carrying guns. And they found themselves surrounded from the sides by the knights of the ranks that withdrew to the parties. Then they realized the trap set for them. But what a surprise! It's too late. So the Sultan ordered to pour lava on them. They were hit with cannons. Cannons and rifles were able to harvest the lives of the tough armored knights easily. None of them could escape or get out alive, because cannon fire has killed them all. At the same time, the cavalry advanced, which were on the sides, to complete their elimination. The trap was sealed successfully. And when he saw the Hungarian ruler Louis, the massacre that happened to his soldiers, and the rest of the army will be annihilated, give orders to withdraw. But the Janissary forces caught up with them, and the knights on the sides overtook them. So they killed them all. He was perishable in every inch on the plain of Mohacs. And during the pursuit was the Hungarian Emperor Louis and senior leaders and pastors in the first rows that fled, and they found themselves in front of the raging river and the Ottoman cavalry behind them. They went crazy and make sure that they are inevitably doomed. They threw themselves into the river. Many soldiers followed them. They all drowned in the river. When he was found, the soldiers remained, rifles and cannons behind them. The cavalry surrounds them, and the river in front of them. But everyone who tried to cross it drowned in it. They decided to surrender and lay down their arms. And the Hungarians lost the battle. 27,000 soldiers. The rest were captured, and the Hungarian army was destroyed in less than an hour and a half, in a battle that showed the strength and intelligence of Sultan Suleiman, and his grip is tight on Europe. While the Muslims rose to 1,500 martyrs, and the Sultan waited in the Mohacs Valley for 3 days, because he thought he only destroyed part of the Hungarian army. A second army may reach him, but after 3 days, Sultan Suleiman moved. Budapest, the capital of Hungary. He received the congratulations of Eid al-Adha in the king's palace, and celebrate the holiday in the capital of Hungary, Budapest. Thus, he has completely eliminated the Kingdom of Hungary. A large part of it joined the rule of the Ottoman Empire. It continued to be subject to the Ottomans 3 centuries. and Mohacs remained in the memory of the Hungarians, a difficult defeat that continues with them to this day. This period was the golden age of the Ottoman Empire. It proved the strength of Islam and Muslims in Europe and the whole world. God's mercy be upon Caliph Suleiman the Magnificent, and Ali, his father, Salim al-Qadai. You can imagine how tired the Muslim conquerors were in order for them to reach us with ease. You can imagine how much effort we made in order to convey history to you in an easier way. Don't forget to contribute with us by liking and sharing. If you are on YouTube, click subscribe and activate the bell in order to follow the episodes of The Historian, and see you in a new opening. Peace be upon you.